It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, January 5th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that would much rather be talking about Travis Konecny going to the All-Star game and less about the Flyers power play. But here we are, Russ.
I can understand that.
We're going to get into that, preview Saturday's game against the Flames, and talk Ed Snider Legacy night.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get the latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, that was a bad loss. It really was.
It was. I mean, to put it in good perspective, Damon Severson of Columbus, who got that first goal for them, was like, we didn't deserve to win this game. But then, he talked about the good things they did, and they got great goaltending out of Tarasov, and, it just happened. It's kind of like snowballed. But, the biggest question, and I don't know if it was asked post-game, was why didn't you use Travis Konecny in the shootout? Like, he was the hottest guy on the ice. He willed his team to the 2 goals. Like, there's no reason not to use him.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a mistake. And it should have been a reward for how he played during the game as well. Like,
get the cheers, use him. He should have been used before Couturier, really.
Yeah, although, like, if Couturier is a guy that likes to go first or in that position, like,
okay,
you give him that. But I do think you use Konecny in the shootout. I think it goes without saying. I also think, though, that, that top trio stayed out way too long in the overtime.
Oh, yeah.
They needed those fresh legs to even have a chance there. And, even if, they came out and went back in after 30 seconds or something, that would have been better. But yeah, man, like, what a disappointment after such a great early start with Konecny getting both those goals and, getting the All-Star bid, which of course is well deserved. He's absolutely the right choice from the Flyers.
Oh, there's not even a question. And I hope he could outwardly say he's very happy about it, even though they lost. But we kind of know the Torts rules, so he may not. And that's a shame because he really should be very proud.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm glad they talked to him between periods.
Yeah, that's good.
Between the first and second period, so he could just talk about it in a positive way, regardless of the outcome of the game. But yeah, the other problem here, other than the power play, which we're going to get to, is we talked about before this game if they were going to go 11-7 again, and if so, what that would look like. We got inklings that Cam Atkinson was going to get sat, which we said was fine, and he should sit. Right. The problem is then they also sat Morgan Frost, which I don't think was the right decision. And, congrats, Rhett Gardner, for getting in the game. I think, this is not on him in any way, shape, or form.
No.
But it's just like, we talked about them having a more useful call-up to put in this situation. But I also don't think the 11-7 was the right decision or necessary.
No, definitely wasn't the right decision. Wasn't necessary. Okay, you saved some defensemen some extra minutes, fine, but you did that last game. So if that was the preparation for coming off a West Coast trip, coming back here, then one time doing it should have been enough. Like, these are professional athletes. Yeah. And it just, yeah, it's a head scratcher. And then guys were just playing I mean, these lines were crazy. Garnet Hathaway on the second line. There were so many things tonight that were done that just didn't make sense to me in the game, before the game started, just like lineup wise, usage wise. Even at the end of the game, like, why is Tyson Forster the guy you're trying to go to save the shootout when he's struggling? Like, he's struggling. So you're just going to push him out there and hope for the best. You know what I mean? It's like, why put him in that position? Like, sometimes the logic's not there.
Yeah, I don't know. And, I would say other than Owen Tippett taking a million shots on goal in this one, or a million shot attempts, I should say.
Shot attempts, I should say. But I think it was very clear that the Couturier-Farabee Konecny line was the only one that had anything going because they stayed together and then weren't shuffled around. And correct.
And so I think, to your point, that's what kind of had a negative effect downstream with all the other shuffling going 11-7. The chemistry wasn't there.
It's fine when you're up 2-0, but this was a team, the way it was put together tonight, that there's no way they were scoring 3 goals in this game. They just didn't have the talent level. They were more of a grinded out team.
But
they were more of a grinded out lineup. They were. Like, if you start looking at it, you're like, this is, now at now on third line, you're expecting Ryan Poehling to score more than he, like, you know what I mean? These are more hopes than you actually have data to back it up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about it just from a 30,000 foot view, what does this lineup say to you? Yeah, I can see what you mean by that. I think that really what it comes down to is not being able to execute on the power play, because
I mean, that killed him. It did. And to be honest, there's nobody you could talk to in that place that feels like it's going in any good direction, other than it's just the comments. Well, the puck's moving around better. Hey, they had some shots, but they still need help from the outside to cure this. They are so defiant in trying to figure this out on their own that it's really going to cost them. And it's just, I don't understand it. Like, with everything you got going for you today, technology and otherwise, you've got a front office that's willing to spend money. Like, there's things you could do to try and correct this, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, it's just devastating. And that full 2 minutes of 5-on-3 coming up with nothing
it's hard to do. It's actually hard to do. It is unacceptable. And the thing is, what really was unacceptable about it was Columbus was really smart. There was a point before it was like 40 seconds left in it or something, where Columbus got the puck and they didn't shoot it down all the way. They shot it just over the blue line so that the Flyers would have to take it to center ice, and they maintained their box. And, the Flyers should have been able to recognize they were not going to leave that box. So all you had to do was really get 2 passes, one from one side, get the goalie moving to the other side, and try for the open net. And I would have tried for that like 3 or 4 times. I think they did it once. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's absolutely coaching. That's what that is right there. That's the inability to recognize that. And when you change out personnel, the new personnel coming in should have done that immediately, and they did not.
No.
So I think that's what's going on there. Now, they also definitely let up in the third period. Like, when Columbus has a surge in that third period, the Flyers defensively really should have had a better answer for it. But again, when you're mixing, you have 7D and you're mixing up pairings and, things like that, it does have an effect on it. But also, they just weren't playing good enough team defense in terms of clearing the puck and making an effective transition. It was just get the puck out of the zone, but then do nothing, and Columbus get it back.
And I got to be honest, it was a moment, like that was a moment, where you see the crowd just booing the hell out of Johnny Gaudreau before he shoots, and then he puts the dagger. Like, I mean, it's just unbelievable how that went.
Yeah, well, that was not a great night, but you know what was great? It was Cutter Gauthier scoring the game-winning goal for Team USA to make it to the gold medal game.
Yep.
We're going to talk more about that on Monday's show, wrapping up our World Juniors coverage. In the meantime, the Flyers move on to the next one and face the Calgary Flames. We're going to talk about that one coming up next.
The NFL regular season's wrapping up. There's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. Again, I'm going to tell you, go with the over for the Eagles Giants. It was something like 41. I just am feeling it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Next week on the show, of course, on Monday, we'll have our nemesis of the week. We're going to recap this game against Calgary we're about to talk about the World Juniors medal games and more. The Flames, since we saw them last, which was very recently. So we don't have to think back that hard. Of course, the Flyers played the Flames on New Year's Eve. And we didn't really talk about the Flames per se when, prior to that game, because we did the crossover episode talking about the Kraken. So we don't really dig into the Flames that much. So we thought we would do that a little bit right now. And I think that one thing we saw in that last game is that, while the style of play isn't exactly the same between the two teams, they are very similar in results.
Yeah, they're very similar. They have more, I think one more, maybe shorthanded goal than the Flyers. So they play
Yeah.
that style. It's odd what's going on there. And I think, again, they have the problem where they have a very talented team, but they know they're going to end up trading 2 or 3 of these players, right? And so I
Yeah.
think the issue there is, Mangiapane, he usually gets 25, 30 goals. He's got 7, which is odd. Blake
Right.
Coleman's leading the team in points and goals, which is odd. I do like what Sharangovich, thank you. That was easy. I like what Sharangovich has brought to them. A little speed, a little goal scoring. I think a little bit of size. That's been good. And Uyghur's done really well. Like there were times I was worried about Uyghur. Connor Zary looks good as a young player. Huberdeau's just laying there in the weeds. Like you always have to kind of worry about him, that he's going to have a big game, but I don't know what's happened to his game. But still, a very talented group that you shouldn't. To me, it's kind of like in this one, don't play their game. I know that is your game sometimes, but don't play that game because, again, I think they have a little bit more talent than the Flyers do to play that game, and I think they might lose it if they do it that way.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to that there's so much similarity that like what the Flyers normally do, like isn't going to work this time just because
Right.
the similarities are there. And, to your point about their penalty kill and then playing with a power kill style there, they do have the 5th best penalty kill in the league. It's only 2 spots below the Flyers
Right.
in that, and they do have all those shorthanded goals. They also have the 3rd worst power play in the league, which is only 2 spots better than the
Which is
Flyers.
shocking. Really shocking.
Yeah. Like, given who they have on that team, you would expect them, especially with Huberdeau,
Yeah.
Lindholm, Kadri, Mangiapane, like, there's so many options there, and their power play is just dreadful. And that's where, like, the similarities don't even stop there. That's the thing. It's not just special teams. You look at the team shooting percentage, very similar. High danger chances for, scoring chances for, it's all the same. It's
Yeah.
all the
Like
same.
the
And so
mirror
to
image.
try
It's like in Mortal Kombat when you fight the mirror
Yeah.
image of yourself. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is absolutely true, where you get, like, a different color,
Yeah. You just change the
costume for
color.
the same character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that the Flyers are going to really have to focus on adjusting in this game and like switching up things a little bit in order to be successful this time around. Cause they crawled their way back, and scored those 6-on-5 goals. But like that's not gonna cut it this time, right? They
No,
have to
changes are brewing on the Flyers lineup anyhow. they are. So this is a good game to kind of stay on that front, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and in the meantime, the Flames, they did, play the Preds last night while the Flyers were playing the Blue Jackets, so as of recording this, we don't know the outcome of that game. They won versus the Wild 3-1. Prior to that, that's the only other games we have, for reference here, and, I think that there's just so much opportunity in this game, and I think it would prove a lot to come back and win this game definitively after losing to them in the way that they did on New Year's.
Yeah, it would definitely show something, and I think the Flyers would want to exact that revenge. But easier said than done. You got to prove it on the ice.
Yeah, exactly. As of recording, Markstrom is in theory in net versus the Preds. We saw Markstrom last time around. I really think that, there's a decent chance we could see Vladar, but I don't know that that's true, that they may go back and say, "Oh, well, Markstrom was successful the last time against the Flyers. We might as well put
I,
him in
I kind
again."
of feel like they might do that because knowing that their situation is tenuous anyhow with players, and they probably want to bank points and at least try and be in the playoff race, even if they have to make some trades. That they may want to go full board here. Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, one little bit of side news that doesn't really affect this game per se, but Oliver Kylington, was on a mental health leave from the Flames, and he's now back, and he's on a conditioning assignment in the AHL, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm happy for Shillington. He's a good guy. This is a tough thing. We've seen this before with players. I liked what he had said as far as his quotes and stuff. That was good. And yeah, this could be a real bonus for him, especially because you figure Hannafin's going to get traded, so
Yeah.
he can get more playing time in the future too, and a better role.
Yep, and, talking about Hanifin, like, why hasn't it worked out there for him,
Well,
do you
all
think?
right. So if we go way back to when he was going to maybe get drafted, when he was getting drafted, maybe going to get traded to Boston for all those picks. Sorry,
Right.
Boston fans. I'm not going to go that far back. I tried to say that I'm not going to do it anymore because I just did it like a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to try and not mention it. But I have to mention it in this regard. He was overrated for his offense. He was
Right.
always going to be a good physical puck moving defenseman, plays smart, passes well, but I never saw him as a 50-point defenseman. And I think he kept getting paid as like a 50-point defenseman. So then I think expectations were there for him that I think at this point probably shouldn't be. Now, again, it's not like he's old or anything. He's 26, but I think we know what he is now.
Yeah, I think so, and, I think that your point about his style of play is really good because he is the guy that's gonna effectively get the puck out of the zone and get it through the neutral zone, but then it's somebody else's job from there. Like,
Right. He
that's
has a
where
good
his
shot. He'll
expertise.
occasionally score some goals. There's no doubt. And he had the 148-point season, which I think was going to be his career high, like the outlier. But I think like the 38 he got last year, that's what he is. He's got 17 now. I think that's what he is.
And, like, who else from the Flames do you think will be gone at trade deadline?
Uh, well, they can't get rid of Huberto, that's for sure. I think Lindstrom, because I think they not Lindholm. Sorry, Lindstrom. Oy. I think Lindholm because I don't think they have a way of paying him now. I think they were trying to negotiate with him. So I know there was always a lot of talk about him getting traded last year. Then he was like, well, we'll negotiate, and I just think negotiation is going to break off. So I think Hannafin and Lindholm are the guys that are definitely going.
Yeah, I think, if you were to place bets on what the Flames' top 6 it was gonna look like next season, like, there's no way. There's
No,
absolutely no way to predict that in my opinion, but yeah, it should be a really good game, when all is said and done, and one of the big aspects of the game versus the Flames is it's the big, Ed Snider Legacy tribute, which we had a part in,
yeah.
developing, and so we are very excited for that. Both of us will be there in person. We're gonna talk about that aspect of the home game coming up next. It's almost the halfway point in the season, and the team is still in the playoff hunt. But regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in fantasy hockey contests. You can play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, and more on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether guys like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews, plus the new kids like Connor Bedard, if they record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win that 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering all the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube to subscribe. Russ, one of the reasons that you specifically brought up the idea of this night to honor the legacy of Ed Snider was to kind of bridge the gap between sort of generations that, he's passed away like 8 years ago now. And so there are new Flyers fans who don't really know about Ed Snider, right?
Right. They don't, maybe they've heard the name, they've never interacted with them, but there's a whole generations of Flyers fans that have. And so, I would hear little things and could tell that there was a little fracturing of the base from the older fans to the younger fans. And I felt like this would be a good way to sort of bring it all together. Remember those times. It's okay, like I know there's always going to be fans that say, well, you don't want to, go so far back that you only remember Broad Street Bullies and, you can never get out of the past. But, this is like the guy who created it all. So I think anytime it's that, you wouldn't have a product to watch if it weren't for him. So I think it's fine in this case. And I think will be a lot of fun. And I know they're putting a lot of attention to detail into this. We have an idea of some things that might be happening on that night. And, that excites me. I like those kinds of things. I like, we all like nostalgia for the most part. You don't want to live in nostalgia, right? But it's nice to get to get some of it.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially given how much time has passed, since he passed
Yeah.
away, it's really good to look back and just appreciate, I think, what he did to get this team started in the first place and the effort that he put in and campaigning to get this team here and raising the money and putting it all together. And I think that, he's built something that's very important to the fabric of Philadelphia and to the region, and kind of turned a lot of people who may not otherwise, into hockey fans. And that's the thing that I appreciate the most, that, the Flyers started up several years before I was born, but not so far back that it wasn't like a huge part of the city. And I think obviously winning those Stanley Cups in the mid 70s was a big deal too. And that helped bolster the fandom. But, it was largely, him, and he's such a big figure in the city, and I think in the hockey world as well. Like, people
Yeah.
also don't talk as much about the kind of influence he had, in the owners meetings and with
Yeah.
Gary Bettman and past commissioners, right?
Yeah. I mean, Wayne Gretzky would talk about him. Just the other day, people were bringing up like the Winter Classic when it was at Citizens Bank. Like, what was it, 2012? Um, and
Mhm.
and that game was great. That game, they had the usual beforehand, a couple months beforehand press conference, and they had it at Citizens Bank. And it was Glenn Sader and Ed Snider basically like saying, "My team's better. No, my team's better." It was really great. And and they I think they even hugged at the end. I have a picture of it. Um, it was like two worlds colliding. The Rangers and Flyers sort of colliding like that. And it was really good. And that was something I know that Ed Snider was really happy that they were getting that game. He was thrilled about it. And so that was something that was a lot of fun. And and that's the thing. He enjoyed all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. He was always out and loud and present
Yeah.
all the time. He was at games all the time.
Yep.
He cheered really loudly. Like, he was not a silent owner. He was
No.
an active owner, and, I think that one of the things that you appreciate about his time as the lead owner, for the Flyers is, he was just like, "Do whatever it takes." And he
Yes.
he would say that out loud, and I think that the GMs that he worked with took that message to heart. I mean, obviously, the Holmgren era, especially, I think was peak Ed Snider, just do what it takes to get it done and win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, and that, but the thing was, like, if you think about it in the lexicon of sports, always GMs always have to go to ownership, whether it's a group of people or a board or one person. But they have to convince them of doing a lot of things. You didn't have to convince Ed of doing much. If you were trying to tell him you were going to help the team and you thought it could win, he's going to do it. And that
Right.
and that was the thing that you liked. He was kind of in a way like why Yankee fans like George Steinbrenner so much is the reason Flyers fans like Ed Snider as much, because he wanted to win that same way. That was, that's what he wanted.
Yeah, and I know, like, in the memorial service for him, and the thing that they did to honor him right after he passed away at the Flyers game, it was a little tumultuous, I'm gonna say. Like, with how that game versus the Caps turned out, and that was
Yeah.
the whole wrist uh bracelet game and all those penalties,
Yeah.
and it was just like, it was a wild time. But I think that this is a good time to, like, look back and do this in a more formal way that's just got a little bit more gravitas to it
Yeah, it's like,
than it
it's gonna
maybe
be
did
like,
then.
hey, let's remember the good times and not forget this guy, because
Yeah.
this is why everybody's having, fun with their team or has this as your favorite team now is because of him. His
Yeah.
passion, you know, ran into the fan base. It got into your parents' blood, then it got into your blood, and it'll get into your
Yep.
kids' blood. I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah, absolutely. In that memorial service back then, Gary Bettman told a story about after a particular game. I think it was after that
And they got
Flyers
heated.
at
From what I understand, they would
it
get
got
heated.
very heated.
They would respect each other, but they would get heated.
Yeah. Yeah, like that Ed Snider had definite opinions about how the game should be played, how the
Yeah.
game should be officiated.
Yeah.
Like, he
Oh yeah.
fought for the Flyers in a lot
He
of
did.
ways, and in a way that from the outside you might say that's very hypocritical of what he's saying, about, when things go against the Flyers, it's bad, but when it's for the Flyers, it's good.
Right.
100% agree with that. Agree,
Yeah.
totally. But he fought for this team and this franchise
He
in a
did.
way that very few owners do so vocally, and that's kind of why I appreciated him, having him in the Flyers corner. One thing I do wonder is how he would be reacting now to some of the changes in the game since he passed away. Just like with the limiting of the fighting and with how hits are being officiated and all of that.
Yeah, some of the things he would like, some he wouldn't. He would have made sure like the double Flyers logo would have been back sooner, right? Like
Oh,
that.
yes.
Yeah, that would never have happened. Um, I think for the most part he would be okay with most of the things that are going on. Um, would he have been okay with a rebuild? That's a good question because he was in the era where he never really had to think about doing it, and then by the time
Nope.
so it was almost like he was in the salary cap era for not for long enough that we have a good feel whether he would want to rebuild or not. So I can't answer that one. That's the tough one.
Yeah, that is the biggest question, I think, because I think that is the biggest change in terms of the CBA and how it
Yeah,
works. I often wonder, though, if that last lockout would have happened with Ed Snider around.
yeah, probably would have. I'm gonna say it still would have.
Yeah, I just don't know if it would have gone the same way because I feel like having his voice in the room
It
might have
definitely would have helped.
changed.
I mean, there was another owner who I'm not going to say in the league that probably had too much power that made it go the other
Yes,
way.
that would
So
have mitigated some of that. That
so
is, we know exactly who we're talking about.
yeah, so I think that's fair that he would have, steered the ship in a better direction, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, we are looking forward to that game and honoring Ed Snider on Saturday. We will be there. If you're going to be there, pop us a note as well. We'll be back on Monday to recap the game. We'll have our nemesis of the week. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, you can send them to us via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.